Hi everyone, my name is Sofía Celi and I'm a researcher and implementer of cryptography at Cloudflare. My job focuses on implementing and critically thinking about cryptography and computer science, but I also think about the intersection between privacy and security and what users actually face as a threat in the real world. Today, I'm going to be precisely talking about a topic related to the latter, in the sense that the topic that I'm going to be speaking about is how digital tools are used to enhance gender-based violence. This is indeed a broad topic that covers many axioms, but it has mainly been talked about from a global north perspective. Today, my aim is to bring you the global south perspective, specifically the Latin American perspective, as the way digital tools are used to harm people should not be thought of as it is applied equally to all, but rather as a phenomenon that is intersected by many other factors. The way digital tools are used to enhance gender-based violence in the global north is not the same as what happens in the global south. A small disclaimer for this talk. I will be talking about instances of domestic abuse, sexual violence, and discrimination in general. If at any point you feel uncomfortable during the talk, please feel free to stop the video or leave the video in general. Please reach out to someone and make yourself feel safe. Your mental health is important, so please take care of it. I would also like to say that this talk is dedicated to anyone who has experienced gender-based violence in general, and it's a call to action for us all who make digital tools to think about it when we design systems or applications. For us to build a digital world where this does not happen, or at least it's not enhanced. This talk is also a reminder that we can work together to change the situation, even if it sounds difficult or it sounds too sad. In Latin America, we have achieved change by working together and asking for this change. We as women have united and asked for this change. We have not been aided by governments or big corporations or big organizations. We have actually achieved change by protesting together, by marching together, and by actually achieving the change together. So if we can do it as women in Latin America, you can also ask for this change and actually make it happen. So, how can we start this talk? Where does one begin? One of the things that I didn't realize more than a year ago when this research started is that there's not so much research around the mother as there is research on other topics. The reasons for this could be many, but one of the top ones could be that the thinking that digital tools are used to enhance gender-based violence is not they think that this is not a pervasive phenomenon, or because survivors of it do not appear so publicly. This is not to shame that survivors should appear more publicly, but actually to note that maybe that is one of the reasons why research is not so focused on this area. For me, this research came from a personal experience because I was suffering from gender-based violence that was aided by digital tools. From this personal experience, it became a shared experience because friends of mine were actually experiencing the same. It became then a community experience because the local organizations that I reach out to or the women's organization that I reach out to were actually experiencing the same. And I later found out that this is a global situation because it happens in every country and in every region of the world. And in many countries, it has actually been declared as a pandemic, as it happened in Mexico. In my case, it was a crude usage of digital tools to enhance gender-based violence, as I was warned that my ex-partner might try to install malware in my devices. But it was a subtle one as well, as he surveilled my social media posts to try to find any hidden meaning that could be used to discredit me or harm my reputation. Through this, he managed to make me lose my job indeed. And it is in this way we should take notice. Digital tools used to enhance gender-based violence are not technologically sophisticated most of the times. They are subtle in the realm that we think that is not so much of a big of a deal, but it is indeed. Gender-based violence is the first cause of death of women all over the world. In countries like mine, because I come from Ecuador, in Ecuador, every 71 minutes a woman is killed for being a woman. I would like to emphasize here that they are killed actually for being a woman, because most of the times when I speak about this sentence or people read this sentence, they think that women are killed because they were trying to get mocked or any other reason. But indeed, they are killed because they are women. And I would like to emphasize here that this is not a problem that only exists in the global north, but also exists in the global south and must be even more pervasive in the global south. I would like to say here also that digital tools used to enhance gender-based violence is not a problem only of the global north, even though in the global north, of course, people may be using more digital tools than in the global south. But digital tools used to enhance gender-based violence is also happening in the global south. With differences, yes, but it's also happening. As said, there is research around how digital tools are used to enhance gender-based violence, but it mostly focuses in global north scenarios. What it focuses on and has found is that gender-based violence through digital tools happens by the usage of malware and social engineering. It is worth noting the social engineering part. It is a sort of social engineering in the sense that it's not rampant on active coercion, but rather the gathering of information to guess passwords or any kind of way that they can think about to access the accounts of survivors, for example. We will compare this later point to how it actually happens in the global south. So, what is the state in the global south, specifically in Latin America? After briefly listening to what the research has already done in the global north, will we find the same results? Will the same techniques apply to the Latin American region? The first thing to know around this question is that there is not so much research. There is local research from local organizations or what can be gathered from the experiences of the survivors themselves. This is our main source for our ongoing research. What we found out is that there are specific ways in which digital tools are used, and we try to come up with a methodology, ways to classify them in order to better explain them. Why we try to come up with a methodology? Because when we actually start researching about this, we found out that there was not so much literature around how to actually classify the different ways in which digital tools used to enhance gender-based violence are actually expressed. This is what we will explore through the next slides from the tales of the survivors themselves. The first classification is, of course, sexual violence, as this is the most prevalent use of violence aided by digital tools. A 22-year-old woman recollected. They sent photos of me, intimate photos, to the WhatsApp that we have as a group at the university. They took those photos without me wanting them to. I have attached here also the Spanish text because most of the times people think that these tales do not actually exist, so they don't think that digital tools are used to enhance gender-based violence at all. So I'm actually attaching here actual tales from actual survivors, so you all think that this indeed is happening. In this tale, we see here two instances of digital tools, an instance of taking a photo in a non-consensual way, and an instance of massively sharing it over social media. This situation can be thought of as a trivial one, as is often referred to, but it is not. Taking a photo in a violent way and later sharing it is reenacting. The violent act gets committed again every time the photo is shared. Another woman tells, and I first on this slide I have attached the Spanish text, but we will see here in the next slide the English text, the translation. She says, I don't know who threatened me, I don't know who it was. They sent me messages, threats against my family. They say they were going to talk about me, that they were going to tell them who I really was. They asked me for explicit photos and videos, and I sent them to them. The photos and the video reached out to everyone at my school. I felt bad and I can't talk to anyone. She was at the time a 15-year-old student. This tale plays into many aspects of the region. The first thing is, of course, the cohesion. The survivor was not sharing something willingly, but was forced to, because society in general aids this forcing. The attacker knew quite well that she would not want to tell her family about her private life, because it is shameful to be found as a woman, that you have any kind of sexual desire, or that you are a sexual being at all. Therefore, she complied, because it was easier than facing the misogynistic society. There's a common stereotype that women in Latin America are hot or sexually liberated or dress provocatively in a free way. The reality could not be further from the truth. Latin American societies could be very misogynistic and play into the idea that women's sexuality is private, and if it becomes public, it is the cause of shame. Abusers use this notion to coerce women in a blatant way, in the sense that if a relationship ends, for example, they will share any photo over social media. They use this to punish women for leaving a man, to publicly expose that she is a sexual being. One of the tactics that we use with women that we work with that experience this is to tell them that having the photos exposed maybe is not such a bad thing, and that maybe the best thing is if they own that narrative. This, of course, is just a band-aid over a huge problem, a problem of misogyny aided by the massive way in which private photos can be leaked. A woman that committed suicide in Brazil after having the photos leaked said, Excuse me if I wasn't the perfect daughter. Disculpa se no fui filia perfecta. To her parents. She said this after having her photos were publicly exposed. She said this not because she was being irreverent, but because she was sad of the shame that she was putting her family on, a shame that she not wanted, nor she intended, nor she caused. This quote is taken from a study that's linked later on top. The natural question to ask is then, how is this media shared? How are these videos and photos actually shared? There's a prevalence in Latin America of Facebook and WhatsApp groups where these photos are actually shared and actively shared. Men's groups, or macho clubs in a way, where men rank themselves around how many photos they can share, or who has the best video, or who has the best photo. On the other hand, sexual violence is also prevalent and is also used to intimidate women that are public. It is a common thing that photos of male genitalia are sent to public figures that are women. It is also a common thing the creation of hashtags that instigate violence against women, such as si no te golpea no te ama, if he doesn't beat you, he doesn't love you, ser machista es hermoso, being a misogynist is beautiful, quema tu mujer por golfa, burn your woman if she's a slut. What happens when women are public and own their narratives, their sexuality, their feminism, their struggle? We have seen a little bit already on how attacks actually happen then, but let's explore them more in depth right now. A woman recollects, they have advised me not to be a feminist so public. This is a common unwanted advice that is often given when a woman is open about the struggle or about being a feminist or about in general just being public at all. And this advice means that if you're public, you are the subject of shame, you are the subject of violent acts. So, how does this shame happen? Women get shamed by targeted social media messages, by hate speech, by sending up sexual imagery, and by much more. In many instances, we have even discovered that there are groups that teach how to do this and hold regular meetings about this. They have workshop for this. In this workshop, they actually list who kind of public profiles women they should actually target and what is the best strategy to actually target these women. In the case of malware is only used by governments in the case of a high public profile figure that is a woman, as governments are the ones who know how to buy the malware and have the economic prestation to actually buy the kind of malware. We have seen this in almost any Latin American government that has actually bought malware from Kingfisher or the hacking team. The results of these threats that are actually more public and happening over social media or by the usage of malware actually escalate to physical violence that can result in physical violence or the death of the victim in this case. This is different to what happens in the global north because the situation of escalation to actually physical violence is not so common in the global north as it is so common in the global south. What happens in the private sphere? In the private sphere, the scene is not so different as what we have already seen. The usage of digital tools to enhance gender-based violence is again not a subtle one. It is one that is on the face. Abusers here in this region do not try to guess the passwords, but actively ask for the victims or survivors to actually say the passwords themselves because men feel entitled to be asking for these kind of things. Or they take the devices for victims to isolate them, which denies them the access to communication, to education, or to have digital literacy. During the COVID-19 pandemic, most of the Latin American governments chose to solve the education problem by using digital tools. It was deeply ineffective as many households do not have access to several devices that can be used in order to access education or to access to remote work. But it was really worse in the case of women because it was prioritized that men should have the access to these devices and not women, which just further the gap of women not actually achieving the status of being digital literate. Latin America is one of the regions that have the lowest rate of people being digital literate. It is the lowest among women as handling technology is often thought of a man's job, and women are often discouraged from having devices or even attending computer-related events, such as attending university studies or workshops, or in general attending any workshop, any kind of event that focuses on teaching women how to operate devices or computer or being safer online. In the case In this case specifically, women do not often realize that many of these tactics that men use are actually violence, because being in a misogynistic society, you think that this is the normal way that men should act. They think that men should be listened to, that this is what normally happens, that this is how a relationship should be. When a man in a relationship takes the devices from the woman, from her partner in the relationship, they think that this is a common ground and that men actually are entitled to do this. They think this because they think that they are aiding a man, that they are being strong with a complicated person, that they are helping a man that might have any other psychological problems that therefore should be listened to. This is what actually happens, and it happened also in my case. So, what is the future? What can we actually do? The first thing is that we should actually change the way in which we think about research. We need research that takes into account the scenarios from different countries and from different regions, and that research that does not only focus on malware. I know that the actual study of malware is actually fascinating because it could be technologically more challenging than only thinking about how to solve social media. But malware, as we have seen, is actually not the main problem in many places. We should also ask social media platforms to do better in other countries besides the global north, because what actually happens is that when we raise concern to certain social media organizations about an ongoing attack against women or a survivor who is right now facing some kind of violence in her usage of social media, is that these concerns are not actively listened to. While in the global north, sometimes this is actually listened to because accounts do get taken down, or social media accounts get shut down. Well, when this happens from some countries from the global south, this actually does not happen. When I was researching about this, I also researched around the state of the privacy laws in different Latin American countries. And I was really surprised that most of the privacy laws that actually exist in these countries do not take into account the experiences of women of what they are actually experiencing online. And they should actually be actually compelled. We should actually compel them to actually include in the privacy laws, because this is an experience that is actually actively happening in at least half of the population. We should actually rethink how the sharing of intimate media should be actually happening over social media or over any other kind of media. We should actively create platforms that actually allow users to securely and privately be sharing this intimate image. And with this, I would like to end this talk with a little bit more happy note, in the sense that I would like to encourage again, as I started this talk, by saying that if we act together, we can actually change the situation. I put this up here, a photo of the Women's March in Argentina, in which one of the main slogans were "Juntas," which means together in Spanish. This means that if we act together, we can actually change the status of what is right now happening, because this is something that as a society and as a community that actually develops digital tools should be taken into account. So we together can change things. And this is not only to say that this is the scenario and it is sad, but actually to actually ask you that please work together and change this situation. Here are some of the resources that I have used to actually give this talk that you're encouraged to read. These are actually organizations that are working around thinking about how digital tools are used to enhance gender-based violence. The first one from Ecuador, the later one is from Brazil, another one is from Mexico, and here I have also attached a blog post of my experience of how actually I was facing the usage of digital tools to actually enhance gender-based violence. And with this, I would like to thank you all for listening to me, and I'm open to any questions if you have any. So thank you.